Today with Austin Gray, the co-founder and the chief strategy officer for Blue Water Autonomy, to discuss this innovative organization and its Liberty Class MUSV. So, Austin, to start us off, can you share a brief personal and professional background with insights on how and why you and your co-founders decided to start Blue Water Autonomy?
Yeah, Greg, thank you for having me. Excited for this discussion. If I rewind, I was in the Navy, active duty as an intelligence officer. I got out, I went to business school, and I did something a little bit different after business school. I went to Ukraine. I started working in a drone factory. So the same, small drones you see on the news, the small flying drones, small ground drones. I couldn't stop thinking about my experience in the Navy of like, all right, these small drones that we're doing in Ukraine they're cool, they're useful here, but out in the Pacific, we need some like big ship-sized drones, right, to cross the Pacific to carry big payloads the Navy's built around. The Navy's built around missiles and radars and heavy stuff that requires high power. You can't put that stuff on a little drone. And so that was sort of the initial problem statement in my brain. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I called called 1,000 people, became fully read up on that subject, developed a lot of conviction, got back from Ukraine, met my co-founder Rylan, and we ideated more on the problem space. And Rylan had just finished selling his last robotics company and knows how to build a business and build a lot of robots. And so we kind of put our heads together on those lines. And then we met Scott a couple of months later and incorporated in April 24. But that was the initial thesis. And now the Liberty class vessel under construction. I got a model right here. So this is a model of our first ship, the Liberty that you referenced, and she's under construction down in Louisiana at Conrad, and excited to get her in the water as soon as possible.
And just looking at Blue Water Autonomy specifically, can you give a by the numbers look at the company today? Just something that gives size and scale to your operation.
Yeah, so we're about 60 full-time employees, closer to 100 with contractors. A couple major partnerships with a shipyard, with big suppliers, right? Michigan, Georgia, Louisiana, and then offices, full offices in DC, two in Massachusetts, and then smaller setups in Louisiana and San Diego.
That's excellent. So can you talk about, obviously you're a startup. There's a lot of startups out there. An important number is always capital. Can you give more details on how much has been raised to date?
Yeah, yeah. So we've raised over $60 million total, and the last round we did was last year. We did a $50 million Series A led by Google Ventures, and I was particularly excited about this one because I think it's one of Google's first returns to defense tech, and they've been somewhat more cautious about defense until now. They're getting back in the fray.
Let's, as I said at the outset, we're here to talk about the MUSV. Can we discuss in detail the Liberty Class Medium Unmanned Surface Vessel? I can read all the technical spec online, but can you walk me through the MUSV, the key systems and its attributes?
Yeah, so the solicitation online explains kind of the requirements the Navy is thinking about. We really started Blue Water with reliability, right? Let's build a robot that just works. And so the first thing we focused on is let's build a really reliable autonomous engine room, an engine room that generates power and propels the vessel with no humans there. We run our engine room in a microgrid, so you have several engines in 20-foot containers that each of them generates power and powers an electric grid, and that propels the vessel and powers payloads. So that's our sort of core system. It allows us to have endurance of 60 to 90 days out on the open ocean. The endurance, I think, is a really important factor because you've gotta have these things stay out for a while to make them worth, developing and deploying, because that takes the dull, dangerous, and dirty missions away from sailors. Um, the base of the vessel that we designed has that reliable power system, and it's plugged into a hull form that was developed by Damen, a Dutch naval architecture firm. They fielded, I think, over 100 of these axe bow hulls, and so we've taken our core tech, we put it inside Damen's hull design, which has gone out there many times. We didn't feel like we needed to reinvent a new hull design from scratch. And then it has a big open deck on the back to carry a lot of containerized payloads. The Chief of Naval Operations has been really pushing the containerized payload campaign, I'm sure you saw, and he wants to get missiles, drones, C3, other payloads, on the decks of these vessels. And hopefully the adversary won't be able to guess what the payload is, right? And that creates a lot of ambiguity for them. So, uh, as a former intelligence officer, I love that ambiguity for the adversary because it'll create a lot of dilemmas for them in their own planning. Um, so we talked about the power systems, the hull design, the space on the deck and the payloads. And the last part's kind of the autonomy and the stuff on the mast, right? So uh, very high-end suite of sensors on the mast to give the vessel perception abilities at night in denied environments, kind of, in fog and all these different challenging situations. And that's what really drives the high capability for the navigation autonomy, even when your comms are down.
When you look at what you're offering and you look at the body of what others are offering, I guess what do you consider from that technical lineup, or what do you consider to be the key technological or the key differentiators?
I think there's a technological differentiator we have, and then a non-technological differentiator. On the tech side, I think our differentiator is probably that reliability in the engine room tech, the whole mechanical engineering systems that I started off talking about. Um, we focus there because the Navy has a long history of struggling to solve problems like that. Congress mandated in 2021 the Navy test engine rooms for these unmanned ships. Um, no one's really proven this stuff works super well yet. It doesn't work very well on the medium USVs they have out there, the Sea Hunter, Sea Hawk, and all those. They have a lot of people on those vessels. So that's the tech side. The area where I think we differentiate as well is just our investment in the tech, right? In a vertically integrated approach and our focus of our investment. So I think there are a lot of great companies that have been as speedboat USV companies or sailboat USV companies for their histories. And they have a lot of applicable tech they can port over from their speedboats or sailboats, USVs, onto a medium USV. But a lot of it doesn't work on a ship-sized vessel. It's a whole different form factor. You need different sensors, different compute, different payload. It's just a lot of it's just different, right? So those are really great entrants to this market. I'm excited that they're in the market. And I'll say the same thing about the shipbuilders. There are some amazing shipbuilders competing in this program. It's really good for the American industrial base that the Navy has pushed forward a program that can tap several different yards that aren't traditionally building, you know, the destroyers or submarines or the main backbones of the fleet. Um, but those shipyards, don't have a track record of deploying robots around the world, right? My CTO, my co-founder Scott, this dude has deployed 4 million robots working around the world. Um, that's an incredible track record,
Yep.
and you've got to be able to fuse shipbuilding and robotics in order to, I think, deploy a robot of this complexity.
When you look holistically, do you envision entering that shipbuilding market or buying a facility to do your work?
We're very happy working with Conrad right now. Uh, Conrad has far more capacity than a small yard, which we could, if we needed to go buy a yard, I'm sure we could. Our investors would be excited if it was the right course of action. But a yard like Conrad is, Conrad's like a publicly traded company. You can go look up their stats. They're able to build 30 or 40 vessels per year.
Yeah.
So why would I want to go buy a smaller shop that I could acquire that's, going to build one or two or three per year, have to take over that responsibility, help capitalize it, and then make sure that I can fill out its book of business to run it as a, at least a break-even business otherwise. That seems just like a lot of work and stress, compared to having a yard that can already build,
Sticking on that whole Conrad shipbuilding, obviously the first MUSV was to be built or is being built at Conrad. Can you give some insights? Why was Conrad selected for the job, and what are the specs and the current status of the MUSV new build down there?
Yeah, we picked Conrad because they're the right size yard for a project like this. They can easily absorb this capacity. They're excited about the opportunity to prototype the first one. And they're able to and excited about the opportunity to go to production at scale, right, which is what the Navy wants. So I think they're only, maybe there are 40 yards that could build up there, focus on building vessels of the size. There's probably only a single digit number, that could really, do the size vessel and scale production, efficaciously. Combine that with Conrad's done some Navy work, their regulatory wise compliance with, working with the Navy. They got soup ship on site, a couple different factors like that. To answer the second part of your question, the build's going great. I mean, we got multiple modules, coming together. There's some pictures on our LinkedIn and Twitter, I think from a week or two ago. We did a tour. We had a great group of government folks, industry folks down there, walking through, taking photos, learning about the build, and excited to keep it going and maybe do a fun, big keel laying ceremony or something like that later in the summer.
No, that's awesome. So, obviously, recently the U.S. Navy issued their MUSV tender. Blue Water Autonomy was not selected for the short list of 7 companies. So I guess in short, what now? And I guess how do you see this marketplace evolving?
Yeah, so we were not on the initial list. I think there are multiple tranches of Medium ESV. I think there's multiple sort of other things in the works behind the scenes, which I can't really go fully into right now. But the TLDR is we're still very much in it. Our build is far ahead of most of the companies that I saw on that list, from what I know. But there's some great companies on that list. I'm excited to see what they push out for the Navy.
Are military applications the sole focus of Blue Autonomy? And if so, how do you see the market evolving holistically? And if not, what other key markets do you see for this?
Yeah, I think it's a defense first market because of the regulatory environment right now. The ability to operate an autonomous ship is still something that the Coast Guard and international equivalents are figuring out. How to certify that to be done safely. The Navy has national security waivers, so I think the government is still the best, initial customer in this market. But yeah, Blue Water is a commercial company. We're a dual use company. We are excited to serve other future markets. There are several that we have sort of in our sights,
Hmm.
but not going to go into specific targets there. Still very much focused on the, let's say, more mature naval market where people are moving out and buying stuff.
How specifically is Blue Water Autonomy prioritizing investment in the coming year? And what can the market expect to see tangibly from the company in the coming 12 months?
Yeah, we're really focused on continuing to differentiate our tech, right? So that engine room autonomy that we were talking about at the beginning, and our navigation and perception autonomy, right? We've got a great perception stack that's able to, meet all the key requirements, which are pretty high bars that the Navy's setting for us. And so we're just focused on nailing the tests, nailing the core tech, and then fitting that into this whole design for the medium ESP that you see under construction, and a couple other things that we have in the works.